Thanks go out to my patrons and viewers like you. Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to Blue Dragon Art. I am the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This week, I am going to be talking about, of course, another art-related topic. But this time, per request, I'm going to be discussing the who, what, when, where, why, and how of flatting. I won't be covering to what extent because I don't feel that is necessary. I want to start this off with a preface. I am not a professional flatter. I do absolutely highly recommend that if someone is interested in learning how to flat, check out the video that I have in the iCard as well as in the description. It's by a professional colorist. His channel is called Color with Kurt. This is the YouTube video that I personally watched to start flatting. When I flat, I do it a little bit differently than how he does, but his suggestion is the one to follow, and I will try to relay that information here in this video while having some flatting going on in the background. But as with any type of project, something that I think I should say is that it's really important to have open communication with the person that you're doing the work for. Be on the same page, check in, see if there's something that you could do that is more helpful for them. So they are also oftentimes, well, depending on the person that I work with is also willing to make things easier for me by leaving notes on some of the pages, which you might see if I get to that area. I might highlight that in the video, but they've left a little note that they were going to remove that they placed in the line work on that page. But even so, I do highly recommend you check out the Color with Kurt video that I have linked in the description. I may possibly even check out some of his instructional videos. He's got like tutorials. This is not sponsored. This is just, I literally went to YouTube looking for a how-to guide, and this is like the number one. It's got quite a few likes, got quite a few views. So yeah, nothing here is sponsored, and I have not bought any lessons from him yet, so I can't even report on that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. We're going to start with the who. Well, it's the flatter and the colorists. I'm going to say colorist and color a lot in this video, so just be prepared for that. I may mispronounce it because I'm saying it so many times. But it's essentially two artists, one who is doing the color flats and the person who is going to be doing the color. There could be another person involved. There might be someone who's doing the line work that's different than the colorist. But that's the who. What is flatting? It's essentially selecting large blocks of shapes and filling them in with a solid color to provide easily selectable shapes for the colorist to then render. That's like the boiled down definition of what flatting is. I'll talk about how and why later on. When, after the line work's complete. Where, you can do this as a digital file. That's how I'm doing it. That's how I've seen most of it done. But I can't help but imagine that I'm sure that this could be done traditionally. Maybe somebody's doing the traditional line work and then it gets passed on to somebody else who just does the main blocks of color, and maybe they don't necessarily specialize in color, but they would of course probably be needing to use whatever the necessary color palette is for that comic. Unlike when you do it digitally, it doesn't really matter. And then I could imagine somebody passing that on to somebody else who is doing like the rendering and adding depth and value to the image. I don't want to say that for sure, but I can imagine this probably got its start before digital coloring. However, this is a walkthrough for digital. It's not for traditional. Why? Okay, so I said earlier that what we're doing here is essentially looking at the line work, and we are making solid bodies of color so that the colorist can take their wand tool and let's say they want to color a specific character's hair. Instead of having to do all the outlining of that shape themselves with the lasso tool, they can just grab the wand tool and boom, select it. If they have contiguous on, they can just, select one panel's hair. Or if they want to do a bucket fill of the hair color just in one go, they can take the contiguous option off and then color drop whatever the color of that character's hair is all of that specific color that was used for that character's hair will be selected if they so choose with their tools, with the wand tool and the bucket fill tool. Now, when I do this, I do reuse some of my colors, which has not been an issue with the person that I am doing this for. If it did become an issue, I would immediately use different colors for every single element. But as it stands, I keep the same face color, the same hair color. Generally speaking, I keep the same shirt color per character. But that allows for the colorist to quickly select things so that they can get started on the rendering. Why people do this for the colorist is because it saves the colorist a hell of a lot of time. First off, I have everything sped up, but this can, depending on how much detail there is, take anywhere from like 30 minutes for something that doesn't have a lot of detail to an hour. If there's a ton of detail, it might take me an hour and a half. It really just depends on the page. Me selecting those color blocks according to the line art that's been provided makes it so that the colorist can focus solely on adding value and depth and rendering essentially the color. The other thing that one needs to keep in mind is that a lot of people, when they receive the flats from the person who is flatting, they will duplicate that flatted layer and they'll do the rendering on the duplicated layer. If they get so far into the rendering and they feel like they've messed up or they want to try something else, let's say they've messed up. Well, after they've rendered, there's gradations and stuff on, we'll say, somebody's face if they're adding like a soft shadow and the hard shadow is like elsewhere. If they were trying to use the wand tool to select that face to redo the work, then they're going to come across a problem because even if you have the wand tool set to the highest tolerance to pick up any pixel that looks like whichever one you've selected, there's a possibility that they might not select the entire area that they want for the face to redo the rendering on. With the flat layer still in the document, that's not going to be a problem because it's a solid color. So they'll go down to the flat layer and just select the face, and then they can delete what they've done back on their rendering layer and redo what they're doing. Likewise, let's say they've picked a color for the shading or for the tints, for the highlights, and they wanted to experiment and try something a little different. Once they've already rendered it, same problem. Even with the highest tolerance, if they've used a color that's completely different from the flesh tone, or the hair tone, or whatever they're using, then they're not going to have an easy time reselecting it. You go down to the flat layer that's still there, just select that, make sure that you don't have, your wand tool set to acknowledge all the layers. That's important to keep in mind, otherwise that theory does not work. Select the face or the hair, then go back up to the rendering layer, and you can go to your drop-down menu and play around with the image saturation, or the hue, or contrast, or whatever it is you want to do. That flat layer provides you the freedom of being able to mess up and do it over. You just keep the flat layer on its own thing, and then when everything's done, you probably could get rid of the flat layer or hide it or something of that nature. So that is the why. That is why people like to have color flats done, because it saves them a hell of a lot of headaches. It's not just it's saving me time on selecting each individual element of the panel. It's also saving them time having to do that. And then, if they didn't do that, then they'd have an issue if they are rendering on the same layer as where all the color, they don't have the flat at all. They have to worry about like the gradation and being able to pick up all the pixels again. I hope that all makes sense, because specifically I was asked why. What is the point of having a flatter? And that's what the Color with Kurt explained. Now, when we're coming to the how do you do this? There are a couple settings. There's like 3 main tools that I use, and there are very specific settings that you have to have set. I'm not so sure about like if you're using Clip Studio Paint, or if you're using something else other than Photoshop. I can only speak to the program that I use. So in Photoshop, what I use is the polygonal lasso tool, as well as occasionally the regular lasso tool. For both of these tools, you must have anti-alias unselected. Do not have that selected because you don't want that gradation. You don't want any feathering. You don't want it to kind of guesstimate and pick up pixels that are not part of your selection. You want a jagged edge for your flats. You want it to just be individual pixels. You want no feathering or gradation or anything like that. The same is true for the wand tool. Make sure that anti-alias is deselected. I set my tolerance down to 20. Depending on what I'm doing, I usually have contiguous selected, but if I needed to change something and I want to select more than one area that's not touching to change a color that I've picked, like I picked a really bad light blue color that whenever I was checking to see if I had any orphaned pixels, my eyes kept not being able to tell the difference between this light blue and the neon green that I use for the background. I have since decided to stop using that blue color, so if I wanted to just completely get rid of that and change it to a color that's easier for me to visualize, easier to see and check, then I could just take the contiguous off of the wand tool, select it, and then use the bucket tool to fill in a new color, a new shade, or whatnot. The other tool that I use a lot is the bucket tool. Well, you don't have to worry so much about the anti-alias on this, but I set the tolerance to 20. And again, depending on what I'm doing, I flip between using the contiguous and deselecting the contiguous. I use the spacebar a lot. It's the shortcut for the hand tool. It will help you move around when I'm using the polygonal lasso tool. That really helps me out. I specifically use that because I have a mouse that I'm using. I'm not using a tablet with a pen. I would imagine if you're using a tablet with a pen, it's probably going to be easier for you to use the regular lasso tool and just use your hand like you naturally would. But since I don't have the same range of motion, I have a limited space with my mouse here on my desk, I chose to use the polygonal lasso tool because then I can set the point, use my spacebar as a shortcut to select the document and move it whatever direction I need to so that I can get to the next point following the line work. Those are the primary tools. When you're ready to start doing your flatting work, you would want to open up your document that has the line work. And the first thing I do is I create a new layer. It doesn't really matter if that flats layer is on top of the line work or under the line work. If it's on top, I set it to multiply so that I can see the black line work underneath. But if you have your flat layer underneath the line work layer, then you're going to do the opposite. You're going to have whichever layer is on top set to multiply so that you can see what you're doing, see what you're working on. Once I have that set, I begin by selecting each individual panel. The way I work, I leave the backgrounds all one solid color. You don't have to do it that way. In fact, your colorist, talk to them. They may want each panel to have a different shade or a different color in the background so that they can just work with a single panel. Like if they want to use the wand selection tool and select all of a single color, like I was talking about, like all the hair color. When I do flats, I sometimes reuse colors. If your colorist doesn't want you to do that, then make each and every background panel a different shade from the other or a different hue from the other one. Make sure that they're different. The person that does the coloring that I've been, hired to help with, they don't care, or they have not said they cared. If you're watching this video, let me know, Azifri, if you want me to make all the backgrounds a different color, that's cool. Or you can message me, you know how to get a hold of me. But yeah, I select every single panel and I use the bucket tool to fill it in a solid color. The reason why you want to do that, at least the reason why I do it, is because once I get done niching down, adding detail to the panels for the flats, I hide the line work layer and I go through and I find what I call orphaned pixels, or pixels that have not been colored, ones that I've accidentally neglected to color, or I've changed something and I forgot to pick them up. Something has happened, and there's a little bit of space in between the color blocks. You don't want that. Partially, according to Color with Kurt, one of the reasons why is if this goes to print every now and then, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes the line work will get disaligned with the color that's in the background. And if the colorist is working off of your sloppy flats and hasn't colored something that's, covered by a line, and those lines get, misaligned, then you're going to see where you've left empty spaces. And the other thing is, it's just kind of messy and it's unprofessional looking. That's more of like a nitpick. But if you want to be taken seriously, if this is something you really want to do, like, I'm not the best at this. Sometimes I do forget an orphan pixel, but for the most part, once I'm done niching down, like once I do the background in a panel, in the panels, I'll go and I'll do all of the hair one color using the lasso tool and the fill bucket. And then I'll go and I will grab the face and do all the skin tone for a specific character, a single color. And then I'll go, I'll keep going down. And then just to make sure that I don't have any gaps anywhere, no missed pixels, I will, at the end of flatting, zoom in super close, and I will check to see if there's any pixel that is either the wrong color and sitting between two color shapes, or I'll see, let's say if I've done the hair, hair can sometimes be pointed and jaggy. Occasionally when I'm doing that selection, I'll have a single pixel that is disconnected. It cannot be selected using the contiguous wand tool that's kind of floating in the background or floating at the tip of the hair. I will then unhide the line work, check and see if it's covered, and then I'll decide which color, whether it's the background or the tip of the hair or whatnot. I will make it one of those two colors so that there's no free floating lonely pixels. Everybody's got to be a part of the family, y'all. They've got to be a part of the family. Oh my god, somebody's out there mowing. I am so sorry. It's going to get really loud. Okay, I shut the window a little bit. I hope that helps. The other thing that I check for, and I do this one panel at a time, once I've checked around for free floating orphan pixels, we don't want anyone being orphaned. We want everyone to be part of the family. After that, I will unhide the line work layer, and I will go through and see, do I have colors overlapping? Have I colored in the lines? Can I do what a third grader can do? Have I stayed within the line work? And sometimes, y'all, you know what? I've noticed that, I colored the hair, but it's overlapping into the flesh. Holy shit. Or I've colored, there's a desk panel and I've done the keyboard, and for some reason the keyboard's color, I overlapped the line work and it's bled into the main part of the panel. Panel as in like the electronics panel, not the comic panel. So I go through and I make sure that every color block is within the lines, and then when I'm done, the instructions that I've been given are to hide the line work, save it as a PNG, and then I upload it into a shared file. I get it to the commissioner in the instructed way. So that pretty much covers how and why and all the other questions. I'm looking over my notes real quick. Yeah, I think I covered everything. If you still have questions, if something's not clear, hit me up in the comments, let me know, and I'll see if I can kind of explain things in the comments a little bit clearer. Otherwise, I think that's good for this video. I'm gonna try to get blue as the warmest color out now during Pride Month. It is an LGBTQ plus story. It's pretty interesting. I need to get off my ass and reread it and get it back to the library. Holy shit, they haven't come after me yet. I'm okay, knock on wood. But yeah, I'm hoping to do that next week. Otherwise, you know what? I'll see y'all later. Peace and love. Fare you well. And keep on trucking.